Welcome back to Beyond the Uniform. I'm Justin Asiri, and my goal is to help members of the military community thrive in their post-military service career and life. Today's episode number 371, about 5 books that I think every military veteran should read. Now, normally on the show, I interview guests who talk about their career path since the military, what they did, how they got there, and advice for others to do the same. There are over 370 episodes just like that in that format. I wanted to deviate from that to just delve into a topic off the cuff. I don't really have any notes other than the names of the 5 books that I want to recommend. But they're books that I think about a lot. I've probably mentioned on some episodes before, but I wanted to go into just a little bit of detail about each of them. You'll find a link to each of them in the show notes at beyondtheuniform.org for this episode in case you're driving or running or flying a jet. You don't have to worry about that. You'll have a link. I'll just link it to Amazon. We don't even set it up to get a commission, so know that these are purely intended to benefit you. We're not financially profiting from these recommendations. So we'll just go in no particular order. The very first book is called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. Forever ago, years ago, I interviewed Samantha and Ray Allen, and they recommended this book to me, and I loved our conversation. I bought the book right afterwards, and I've actually, for every single person who's gone through our purpose mapping seminar, I end up sending them a copy of this book because it's been that influential for me. The premise of The Slight Edge is really simple. It is that very small actions taken consistently can change the world. And the reason why I like the book is that the author really hits this theme in a variety of ways that stick for me. But that's the simple premise. He uses the example that I'm sure we've all heard, but maybe not listened to, which is when you invest money consistently, month in, month out, the compounding factor of time exponentially increases that amount of money. I remember at the Naval Academy, advice I wish I had listened to was the Roth IRA, and they showed a little chart. I remember still 20 years later, a chart that showed that if you invested something like, a small amount of money between ages 20 and 30, it would be the same amount of money as if you invested from 30 to 65. It was like, it's just such an advantage to investing early and letting time do the heavy lifting. And I'm sure that you've probably seen this in your own life. For those of you who have exercised consistently, if you were to just do push-ups every day for a year, it adds up. That these small, consistent actions, it's like the river that just consistently flows and grinds down stone and mountains. And the reason that I love this is that it is a very simple but powerful tactic that can be applied to your personal life and to your career. And it's especially meaningful for me because I really, the way that I'm wired, I overweight the sense of just massive actions taken once. I'm much more likely to just go and run a marathon. I'll say 5 years ago, I was much more likely to go and run a marathon than to just run day in and day out. And I love this thought of deciding, who is the man, who is the person that I want to be? Where do I want to go in my career? And then what are the tiny actions that if I were to do them day in and day out, no matter what, it is inevitable that I will achieve my goal. So that might be if my background is in entrepreneurship. If I want to grow my software company, one action I might decide on is, day in and day out, I'm going to reach out to 5 people. I'm going to email 5 strangers and see if I can sell them my software. I guarantee you that if you are applying this slight edge principle, you will grow your business. It might take a month, it might take a year, but that consistent outreach day in, day out will add up. And of course, there's some element here of learning. You're not just sending an email and then not changing it. You're learning, you're growing, you're finding different tactics. That might be another great slight edge principle. Maybe it's setting aside 10 minutes every day to learn a new sales tactic. That could be reading a chapter of a book. That could be watching a YouTube video or listening to a podcast. But if I were to commit to just even 5 minutes of listening or reading to something that is sales oriented, again, I guarantee you that over the course of a year, that's going to have massive impact. I see this for myself. I've got an 18-month-old son, not a ton of time. I'm very consistent in running or biking on a daily basis, but I added in 6 months ago, I've got a hangboard for climbing, and I've just added in that every day I try to do a couple sets of pull-ups, and it's literally at night when I'm brushing my teeth and getting ready for bed, I just space it out and do a couple reps then. It's amazing what that impact has on me physically and mentally. And again, it's not like I'm going to the gym for an hour. I don't have space for that right now, but even just a few sets of pull-ups makes me feel great, and physically I notice the difference. So if that intrigues you, check out the show notes. The book name is The Slight Edge. I think of this book more than probably any book that I've read in the last 5 years, and I know that principle seems like something where you're like, yeah, got it, I'm good. Read the book. It's just something where, and I'm very efficient in my time in reading. I think that most books are purposely made too long. I don't think that's true of this book. I think it's just the right length. He ends it with a bunch of other books that I went on to read as well. Probably 25 books that he recommends. But it's a really good staple to have in your tool belt. And that applies to both personal health, relationships, career. It's a principle that you can apply uniformly across your life. The second book is going to be no surprise to longtime Beyond the Uniform listeners, and that is the book So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. One of the highlights of my work with Beyond the Uniform is I was able to interview Cal Newport, who also wrote a book that I love that didn't make the top 5. It's called Deep Work, but it's very good as well. So Good They Can't Ignore You is great. For those of you who are not familiar with it, there is a podcast episode where I interview the author. It's definitely worth checking out. But here's the quick summary. The book premise is that follow your passion is the worst advice you can give to someone for a career. It is exactly the opposite advice we need to be giving people. What Cal Newport talks about in this book is instead what he calls a craftsman mindset. And I think, I hear the word craftsman, I think of someone in a woodshed carefully, meticulously creating beautiful furniture or works of art. And it is similar to that. He talks about career capital. There's financial capital like money. Career capital is the experience that you build up. And he talks about how when you build up career capital, it can be exchanged for either more money, more autonomy, something else, but those are the two big ones. More money or more autonomy, let's call it. Better title, maybe. And that's true from the 370 interviews that I've done. For someone who serves in the military for 20 or 30 years, they have built up a lot of career capital in very specific areas. Leadership, whatever their functional role was in the military, that is a tremendous amount of career capital. And when they get out, they can trade that career capital. If they were to go into a very near adjacent field like defense contracting or something like that, it's very easy for them to exchange that career capital and say, look, I've done all of this. I'll do something similar. I'll do it at a higher pay grade, a higher title, all of these great things. Versus if someone did a 30-year military career, they build up all this career capital, they can still go and say, hey, I'm going to go into being a chef. Great, perfectly doable. Now, it is likely that they don't have a lot of career capital when it comes to being a chef, unless they've been really doing a side hustle, but let's assume they're not. And so they're starting from scratch. They're not going to be able to trade in their career capital from the military and start at a comparable pay or seniority because they've not built up any career capital in that desired field. And I do think of this as kind of like a teeter-totter, right? If you serve in the military for 3 or 4 years or 5 years, you don't have a ton of career capital, but you've got a lot more time in your life to cultivate more areas of career capital. And for those of you who listened to my recent interview with Charles Mullinger about his search fund, it's a beautiful example of this. He served in the military. He built up some career capital. He went to business school and built up other career capital. He worked in private equity and built up more career capital. And then, with all of that on the table, he started his own company. But he had diversified that career capital in a way where he's more likely to succeed in his chosen career path. The best thing about this book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, is that the principle is very simple, which is no matter where you are, whether you're in the military, whether you're in a job you hate, no matter where you're at, the answer is the same. And that is put your head down and get really freaking good at whatever you're doing. Just don't overthink it. Whatever you're doing, knock it out of the park and build up career capital that you can exchange. And I think that he talks about this in the book, but my personal experience is that we really glorify in our culture the person who quits their day job and jumps off and becomes a yoga instructor, or quits their job and switches to something wildly different. The author cautions against that, and I would as well. I think that we overweight the value of doing that versus someone who knows where they want to go, and they tactically take the steps to, first of all, understand the career capital necessary to succeed in that field, and then they're deliberate and they apply that slight edge approach to building up the career capital they'll need. I respect that much more than the person who just jumps out of the plane without a parachute. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing this show, is for you to gain exposure to thousands of career paths. I have no idea what's right for you. And there's so many unique and diverse career paths available to you as a military veteran. There are unlimited possibilities. But my intention with this show is to shine a spotlight on them and say, look, this is not conclusive, but hey, here's one person that went from the military and went on to earn an Academy Award nomination for directing a film. That's Hank Hughes. That's one of the early episodes. But in that example, let's hear his story. How did he build up career capital to do that? In Hank's case, he went to film school. He got mentored by George Lucas. He did all of these different things. He was filming things when he was younger, all of these different things to build up career capital. He didn't just make a bold declaration and start out from scratch. He was meticulous in building up career capital in the specific areas he knew he needed to succeed in that career path. And that career capital changes based on the industry you're looking at. But that's a good reason to have these coffee chats, which is exactly what Beyond the Uniform is. Have these sorts of coffee chats, but maybe that's a different lens to view them from. What is the career capital that I need to succeed in this industry? And don't just take it from one person. Talk to 3 to 5 people. But my guess is after 3 to 5 conversations, you'll have a pretty good sense. Wow, 3 out of 5 people went to business school. Not required, but maybe that's a good idea. 4 out of the 5 people, worked in a startup first. Okay, that might be a great idea to build up career capital. So that's the second book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. The third book, I'm only about 2/3 of the way through this one, but it's called Positive Intelligence. My wife works as an executive coach. She's exceptional. She works with some of the most impressive CEOs, VPs of sales in the United States. And one of the books that she recommends to them the most is Positive Intelligence. It is written by a Stanford undergrad who went, like me, to Stanford Business School, and then he has worked as an executive coach with truly incredible entrepreneurs and leaders. And the reason that I love this book is that it is so practical. I love personal growth work. For the longtime listeners, I do meditation retreats. I do men's work. I do a lot of different personal growth stuff that's pretty out there. What I respect about positive intelligence is it is very very approachable, very scientific based. And what I most like about it is that the author really focuses on exercises that take you about 10 seconds on average to strengthen what he calls PQ muscles, positive intelligence muscles. Just the quick rundown on this book is that it's all about your mindset in work and in your personal life. But he talks about how we all have these saboteurs, these voices in our heads that tell us things that actually hinder our performance. And the hard part is we've really built up, these saboteurs have convinced us that they're working on our behalf versus against us. And so one of them is the judge. The judge is the one that says, oh, you're going to fail at this. The judge is the one that just kind of tells you you're not going to be able to do it right, so don't even try, things like that. And that psychological hindrance can really be a detriment in our career. And so he goes through different ways that are proven to both weaken the saboteurs and then strengthen what he calls the sage, which is the voice of inner wisdom that really has our best interest at heart and is going to lead us in the right way. And they're exercises that you can do anywhere. So one example he gives is a 1 PQ rep that's like 10 seconds is rubbing your thumb and pointer finger together and focusing on what that feels like. Do I feel that sensation in one finger or the other, both simultaneously? Do I feel the grooves of my fingertips? It's a hack, frankly. It's a hack to get into your body, to get out of your head and to reestablish contact with your body and the wisdom that's in our body that Malcolm Gladwell talks about in the book Blink. So you can do that anywhere. I could be in a meeting and realize, oh man, my saboteurs are at work here. I'm thinking I'm going to fail in this. I'm thinking that everyone at this meeting wants me to fail. Okay, I rub my finger together. I get back in my body. It takes 10 seconds. No one even knows I'm doing it, and then I'm back. And he talks about setting up plans for the executives he works with where their goal is to get 100 PQ reps a day. So, brushing my teeth. Am I really present in brushing my teeth and feeling the bristles on my teeth? 10 seconds there, maybe I get 3 to 5 reps in while brushing my teeth. Then I shower and I'm really present in rubbing the soap over myself. Again, I get maybe 5 reps there. And so it's really using your time throughout the day to use these, he probably gives 10 different tactics in the book, each of which are 10 seconds to really ground and to get a positive state of mind. It's really exceptional. I'm applying it in a lot of areas of my life. But, compared to some of the stuff that I do that's a little bit more Berkeley, California, a little bit more hippy-dippy, this is very rooted in science and very, some of the best executives in the world he is working with one-on-one. And so I recommend you check out Positive Intelligence. We all have these saboteurs. There are many that I think veterans share in common. And I think that this book, while not written for veterans, will be a great boost to you. The next book is a book by Carol Dwight called Mindset. And this is probably one of the more influential books. I don't know technically if it counts as neuroscience, but it's certainly in that realm. I would put this across all of my peers from Stanford as one of the more influential books in the last 10 years. The author of the book Mindset pioneers this concept of 2 different mindsets. And I think this is so relevant to our military veteran audience. One of them is called a fixed mindset. And that's basically, hey, we're born with the talent we have, and you're either good at something or you're not. And you really use these feedback loops to determine, like, okay, am I capable of this or not? She contrasts that with a growth mindset, which just basically says I can learn anything, I can build any skill, and it's just a matter of putting in the time and energy to do so. And she talks about how we now understand a concept called neuroplasticity, which means that the brain can essentially rewire itself with enough consistent effort. See also the slight edge. This all plays together. So the reason why I love this is I definitely identify with a fixed mindset. Some of that is the way that I grew up and the experiences I had. I do think that some of that is from the military. Many of us that grew up in an era of, Johnny, you're so smart. You see a 3-year-old, oh, wow, look at you. Look at how smart you are. This starts to condition children to believe that if they succeed at something, they're smart and they're naturally smart and able to do it. And if they start to fail, that's a sign that they're actually not smart. And so they'll actually start to avoid whatever that activity is. And as we all know, in order to get good at anything, you have to be consistently practicing even when you suck at it, even when you're not doing well, even when you're not seeing radical growth or big wins and successes. What she contrasts this with is with that same child, instead of praising an innate ability, which in this case was being smart, if you praise their effort. Johnny, I really love how hard you're trying. Johnny, I really love your perseverance. Wow, I really appreciate how deliberate and dedicated you are. And I think about this all the time with my 18-month-old son. I catch myself already saying, Bodhi, you're so strong. Oh, Bodhi, you're so smart. And instead, I'm trying to catch myself and try to do better with him and say, look, I really appreciate, Bodhi, how when I see him picking up a heavy object, wow, I love how courageous you are. I love how you're really putting in a lot of effort there. I love how you're really trying. And you can see how that starts to build a growth mindset of, if I fail at something, I can try differently. I can try more. I can consistently apply myself. I do believe, I haven't researched this extensively, but I do believe that in our military, we might have some of that sense of kind of fixed mindset. I think that for people who are in the military, they might view things as off limits to them that are not off limits to them. Like, oh, I've done this for 15 years, therefore I need to continue to do it. A lot of my friends who, like me, served on submarines, I see that. They didn't really like nuclear power while they were on a submarine, and then they go into, let's say, a nuclear power plant in a civilian sector. And sometimes that's because my judgment is that they believe that that's all there is available to them. If we apply this growth mindset, you can see that, like, okay, yeah, you can do anything, and it might take a decade to get to where you're wanting to go, but if it's really what you want to do, you can learn anything. And so I might not be doing the book full justice. I imagine there's some incredible summary videos on YouTube. It's a very popular book called Mindset, but the book is methodically written about different practices to cultivate this growth mindset. And you can imagine if you combine that with that slight edge, it's dynamite. I mean, you can achieve anything. And don't underestimate what it might take to achieve anything, but just realize you don't want to close off doors. You don't want to rule yourself out because you think you are a have-not in the case of intelligence or physical ability or whatever it is. There are ways to grow into anything. The last one, and I feel like a little bit of a cliche by saying this one, but I'm going to throw it out anyways. Jocko Willink and Leif Babin co-wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. I read it. I loved it. It was fortunate enough to interview the authors on the book. I want to recommend this for a couple of reasons. First of all, when it comes to, two Navy SEALs write a book for corporate America, I know that there's kind of a ugh feel. That's why I did not read it for years, and I regret that. They do it right. I mean, they talk about all the reasons why they didn't want to write the book and all the judgments that I honestly had about them writing the book. They address it head on beautifully and really paves the way to be able to learn because they have significant wisdom to share. But it is a book that makes the rounds amongst the civilian sector, and so it's good to be conversant about it. I think it puts a nice spin on our leadership in the military and how that translates to the civilian sector. But beyond that, the premise of the book, in my view, this thought of extreme ownership, it might be something you take for granted coming from the military, but the sense that, in my view, it's like the buck stops with me. If there is a problem in my unit, in my team, in my company, it's my problem. I am expressing extreme ownership by saying I take responsibility for that and I'm going to fix it. And they have different principles in the book, but I love the way it's written because it's basically war story from the Battle of Ramadi that they both served in, war story from their time in the Middle East and what they learned in the most intense war-torn region in the world. And they share a war story, the principle that they learned, and then they apply it to working as a consultants now in a business setting. So it really drives the point home, the sense of seeing it in battle, having it crisply articulated as a principle, and then showing how that applies in a civilian workplace. So I think you'll enjoy the read. I think you'll fly through it. I think it's great at being able to see how what you learn in the military can translate to the civilian sector, how you can maybe brand yourself or explain yourself. I think it's great for that. But I think it's just, for me, really brought back principles that I did learn in the military that I want to continue and that I think are in short supply in civilian leadership. So that's extreme ownership. And those are the 5 books I would recommend. Let me know your feedback if there's other books that you think are great. I always love to read. Most of the books I do through audiobooks, and a quick plug in all of our show notes. We do have a link to Audible where you will get a free book of your choice for being a Beyond the Uniform listener. We get $15 to keep us offset the cost of promotion. So it's a win-win situation. You don't have to pay for anything. I've been an Audible member for years. I have got over 110 books that I've done through them, and then I've done through the library and other sources, other books as well. But it's such a great way. My view on audiobooks real quickly is that I probably get 80% of the value that I would get out of reading the book. But most of these books I wouldn't have the time to read. Just with a kid, I can listen to it while I'm feeding him in the middle of the night or when I'm on a run. It's just amazing, driving around, that net time or no extra time. If you can use that time efficiently when you're doing things, it can be pretty powerful. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week with a traditional interview of a military veteran about their civilian career. Take care.